Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
Welcome to Elevate Podcast, everyone. It's so great to see all of you one more time. It's your boy Josh
and Reg,
and we're grateful to be back on with you yet again. And so is Parliament. It's back in session, so we're gonna be getting into that today, as well as a lot of, let's say, Poilievre's getting a little more what the kids would call aggressive with the Liberal Party of Canada, and it seems to be getting a little more personal. We'll be digging into that as well today, and as well as, Trudeau trying to silence and muzzle people in his party. Yet again, we'll be talking about that, and as well, jag meat, whatever you want to call them, as well as Trudeau are silently trying to get some electoral reform. Is Trudeau trying to make good on his 2015 election promises, or does he have other ulterior motives? We'll be talking to all that today and so much more. Reg, how you feeling, big dog?
I'm doing great. I am doing great. I was telling you, I wanted to save this before we had the show because I wanted to get your in-person reaction on camera, because I had a bit of an interesting week last week. Okay. So at work in the Nova Center, beautiful, beautiful spot. Everything's glass. I was a little tired. I had my coffee cup in my hand. I've got my AirPods in, listening to two meetings at the same time, one in each AirPod, because I had scheduled two things at the same time and they both needed my input. So I was hanging by a thread, because I was like, I just need to be able to know when to pop into each meeting to say the two words that I need to say. And
no one knows what it means.
That's crazy. Yeah. And then the worst part is that so many people too are like, I don't know how you do that. And I'm like, I don't either, but I have really good ability to like divide and conquer. So I'm listening to both conversations at the same time. I'm walking with my coffee cup. I'm not looking where I'm going. Smack right into this glass door. Everybody in the entire room looks up and looks around. And I'm like, it's just me walking into the glass door. Don't worry. And then everybody's like, okay. It sits back down. I was just like, oh man. I ended up we have a secondary site out in Bears Lake, and I was supposed to go there later that day. I just left. I couldn't.
I would too.
I did.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
Just bounce. That's tough. That's tough time, dude.
And then so today I'm having a real good day today, because what happened was we were at work and there was a bunch of food for everybody, so we were feeling good about that. And then, on our way out from getting food from the kitchen, somebody runs into the glass door. I was just like, it's not me now.
They're keeping things real clean over there.
Yeah. Windex, you could sponsor us.
Gee. It's made by the Greeks, as far as I've heard. So.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as the big Greek wedding has told me.
We don't have to cancel it then,
Yeah, no cancels here. Absolutely. That's tough times, man. That's a tough couple of weeks. At least you're validated this week. That it was super clean. You can't see, you're seeing right through that. It looks like a mirror almost.
Yeah. I mean, not paying attention, things are super clean. Sometimes you run into glass.
Dude.
And it's a wake-up call going, maybe I shouldn't be taking two meetings at the same time while looking down.
I'm amazed at that you can do that. I don't buy into it, but I'm amazed that if you believe that you can do it, I guess if you believe, you can achieve. Mm-hmm. But I've never heard anyone being able to do that.
I mean, I listen to Arnold Schwarzenegger often talk about motivational things. He says, people say it's impossible, and then I do it. And I'm like, yeah, me too. While I'm listening to my two meetings.
The fact you got the AirPods going, that's amazing, dude. I'm proud of you, man.
Thanks.
Unreal. For myself, I had a great weekend as well. Football was awesome this weekend. It was great. I almost made a boatload of money. But the Detroit Lions just couldn't hit their dang field goals, and they screwed me out of $43. Gee.
Not $43.
Dude, it was know how much I wagered? It was a big payout.
Okay.
So I bet, for whatever reason this weekend, crazy, I know you're not a football guy, but those who do listen to sports and watch sports on the show, who listen to the show, that's what I meant to say earlier, you know how ridiculous it was. Kansas City Chiefs with Mahomes, underdogs. Detroit Lions, that made sense. They were underdogs against San Francisco. So I bet on both of them that they'd both win straight out. No margin, just that they'd win. I wagered $3. That was a 10x payout of 43.
Right.
No, so more than that.
It would be more than
12,
that.
12
Yeah.
yeah. Way more than that. 20x.
No.
Nope. Not working tonight. You know what I'm saying? This is why I always have my calculator on my phone. But anyways, there was a lot of money out. So I was like, man, so Kansas City came back, boom, beat Baltimore. I was like, okay. Detroit came out up 24-7 in the first half. I was like, oh, we actually might make this money. Let's go. And then they just all fell apart in the second half. And I was like, dang, damn it. Boys. So it was what it was. But it was a good weekend of football. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, you know who didn't let us down in sports was the Halifax Thunderbirds.
Shout out the Thunderbirds, man.
I
Yeah.
mean, went and saw that game. I was not disappointed. They did a great job. And it was nice to actually see a win. So I had gone with some friends the other week, and they did not win. They lost terribly.
Yeah.
Against the Toronto Rock. And I was like, no. And Jen was like, I'm still a winner because she's originally from Toronto.
Yeah,
and I was
of
like,
course.
suck it, Jen. Come on.
Yeah, for those who are listening from across the country or across the border in the States, yeah, Halifax Thunderbirds are our local indoor lacrosse team here. And the city has really grown a liking for them. And they're a blast to watch. It's a great atmosphere. And yeah, they're 500, 3-3 now. So they're in the middle of the batch.
They beat New York, so that was all we needed.
That's all.
Beat the Americans.
Oh, gee, it's still personal for Reg. He thinks about 1812. He's like, I'm glad that happened. We burn it all down.
Oh man, I got a quick story.
Quick story.
We went down to the States for July 4th back in 2012.
Okay.
And they were celebrating the War of 1812.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And we were like, who were you fighting? Because we went down to friends of mine who live in Boston. Yeah. And they're like, I don't know, but we won. And I was like, you know, you're fighting Canada, right? And they're like, what? And I was like, you know, your White House used to be in Pennsylvania. It used to be pink. You know, we burnt it. It was a whole thing. I was like, that's how you got your national anthem, you know?
True.
Rock spread flare. Flag was still there, you know? You were fighting us. And they were like, no, that's not true. They had to Google it. And they were like, how do you know these things? I was like, Canadian education system. We got some things right.
You know, sometimes when you live north of the border of a very patriotic country, you start to have to learn some things to be patriotic in your own right. And that's one of those stories for us.
I know. But you know
Even
what?
though it wasn't really us, but, you know, we'll still say it's us.
Yeah. But you know what, though? I have to say, we were out on the Esplanade for the fireworks, for the show. They had the whole orchestra out there, the Boston Pops, sync to the fireworks. They had Jennifer Hudson there singing the songs. We were singing the American, like, patriotic songs. Like, we were loving it. It was great. I was like, man, Canada, you need to, like, step up. Like, you may have, like, had a whole thing with 1812, but at least they're doing it right now.
Dude, there's one thing we did do, which, you know, I think is we should be super proud of. I've seen it happen within the last 8 years of this government. And this is the one thing they did do right. They made our national anthem more inclusive with us, you know. It's amazing, dude.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. And obviously, being facetious, the fact that we were making fights over our national anthem, which I thought was wild early on. But, you know, it is interesting seeing that. That's the one thing I hate that Trudeau did do. He made our national anthem, a point of contention among Canadians.
Yeah.
That's tough.
It's like, it's just this over sanitization of everything. It's like, oh, we feel upset about the national anthem. It's like, be upset about, like I said, a million times on this show, poor drinking water conditions on reserves. Be upset about the homeless. Be upset about, like, the fact that our economy's in the crapper. Don't be upset about the national anthem. That's not a problem. It ain't broke. Don't fix it. Stop.
Yeah, just sing the lyrics that you know them to be, which I hear in every arena I've ever been in.
I know.
No one sang us up in here. And you know, if it came from a perspective more of someone who wasn't talking down to Canadians, I think it would have been received a lot better.
I do too.
But
I honestly do, because I honestly don't think it's the hugest deal. And like I said, I don't think it needed to be as big a deal as it was, but I think that it could have been so much less of a deal if it would have come from a different mouthpiece. But
imagine that. Could have come from Chrystia Freeland, right? All right, we are moving on. We are going to segment 1, homies. Poilievre is taking a very aggressive approach to the Liberal Party of Canada. So this was an interview that happened, I think last week. And it was the first time I've really heard him take a very clear and enunciated approach to how he views the Liberal Party of Canada. And this was the video that was in question.
There's not going to be a Liberal Party in the next election. Justin Trudeau, of course, is not a Liberal. He's a radical authoritarian. He's the opposite of liberal. He's very illiberal. This is not the party of Chrétien, Manley, Martin. This is a radical authoritarian diversion that you've never seen before and that you don't recognize. In order to clamp down and avoid anybody standing up to him, he's passing censorship laws. He's cracking down on political opponents. And of course, he's taking over the media so that he won't have any contrary voices in the press.
I totally agree with that 100%, because I've always, like, just by virtue of the politics that I believe in, I've always voted Liberal federally. This time I'm looking at this going, hell no way, not in a million years. And I totally agree with that. And I think that it's just wild when I talk to friends of mine who are Liberal supporters, who still espouse that mindset of like, I've always voted Liberal. Liberal's the right way. Liberal's the only way to go. And it's just like, can you not see the divide between what a traditional Liberal would believe and what this man is doing? Like, even the Liberals themselves are not in agreement with it. So, and you see that breakdown happen constantly. But it's just like, how do you keep looking at this person and going, that's a leader? Like, I don't understand that cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. What I found interesting about this statement and the way he worded it, they're not liberal, they're illiberal. And he made a lot of very intense statements, I would say, from a Canadian perspective. When it comes to our politics, those are some fighting words and stuff I've never heard in our politics. It's one thing to say the other side's plans aren't going to work, they're going to be a waste of time, don't vote for them, vote for me. But when you're turning around telling them that virtually you're telling them they're un-Canadian, they don't deserve to be in this country, don't vote, like they need to be gone. That's what I heard in that.
Yeah.
And that was like, whoa.
But see, I see, like, I guess I'm not as excited by that, because I just look at it and I'm going, that's what the Liberal Party has been saying for the past, 2 years now about the Conservatives. They've been saying, like, they're bringing their American style politics up here. They're doing this and they're going to be bad for Canada. They're ripping apart the fabric of Canada. And it's just like, they've been saying this kind of rhetoric. It's nice to see him actually like stand up to it. I actually look at that and I go, I have so much respect for you, Pierre. Like, I vote for you.
Yeah. And the one thing about it though is, you said it, the Liberals have been doing it too. The issue with the Liberals compared to what he just did was he was able to point to specific examples of what the issues are, versus the Liberals are just kind of spouting stuff off. And the way he said, this is not the party of Chrétien, this is not the party of Manley, and because I've never heard a liberal side say this is not the Harper Party. Yeah, this isn't going so on and so forth. I think that's a big statement, and it shows you kind of where the politics are at. And what I heard between the lines in that statement is, you're either voting for the Canada or for a Canada that's just, it's not going to be there if you vote these guys in again. Yeah. And I agree with you said earlier about friends you're talking to who are operating off intel that's about 10 years old. Yeah. Well, this is what the ideals were of the Liberal Party back then, and they haven't really checked in and really seen their values since. It's just easier. There's less of a cognitive load that way, which that's just human nature. And it's then when that understanding is then challenged, that's really tough to accept. Is that an excuse? No. Do we need to really have conversations to persuade people? Yes. But that's what you're really battling right now.
Yeah, and quite honestly, like I alluded to last week, like I am battling that conversation right now with friends of mine, to the point where they told me that their friendship was irreparably damaged. Now, update on that story, that friend actually came back and said like, hey, realized I overreacted. I shouldn't have behaved in that way. I'm sorry. And I'm like, you know what? I understand. I get that. Like, politics is enough to make anybody crazy right now, especially given the environment and the landscape we're in. We'll still continue talking about this stuff, but like also drawing a boundary of like, those ad hominem attacks, they're not appropriate. Like I'm not here to be a doormat, but at the same time, I'm also not going to try and I don't know, persuade you when you're not willing to be persuaded. I'm just here to like have an open conversation. And so I think that actually set a really good tone for going forward with these kind of discussions. But it is interesting to see kind of that, like I call it pretzeling, where they just turn themselves inside out of like this logic that they're using to try and justify or justify the things that are happening. And I don't understand, because I'm like, look at the metrics that you're seeing out there. Look at quality of life. Look at hope. Look at all the things that they're measuring. And then tell me that things are better and say that with a straight face. And people are like, oh no, it's because of the pandemic. I'm like, it's really not. Like the rot started before the pandemic even fell into place, and it just never got better from there.
Yeah, the pandemic exposed it all.
Exactly.
It made it far worse. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think going into that, we have, Parliament's back in session, dude. And question period was fire.
I know.
And I know you were super excited to get into it. I will let you lead the way here. What are some things that really stood out to you in today's question period?
I think I sent you the clip that Pierre actually put on his on his social media account. He had questioned Trudeau about his vacation again, which we all know and love. Mm-hmm. And he basically pointed out the hypocrisy of flying on these private jets that are burning ridiculous amounts of carbon, and then questioning, where was the carbon tax you were paying on that? He said, you weren't, because you're getting this all for free because of your position, your power, your authority, and your rich friends. And you go take a vacation that's $80,000 for free. He said, where's your carbon tax? Where's your climate justice there? And then Justin Trudeau gets up and he says something about how, the Conservative parties, they don't even believe in climate change. Ha, ha, ha. And then he gets up, and Pierre gets up again. He's like, he's just a big hypocrite. He doesn't care. He will fly his private jet wherever he wants to because he doesn't care about the environment. It's only a measure for the lesser people. And I was just like, holy crap. I love it.
Yeah, he really dropped the hammer down on him.
Yeah.
In that, you got one more thing to say.
No. I was just going to say that I think the quotes, because I have a couple friends that I sent this to, and the quotes that came out of 3 out of the 4 people I sent it to was, what a savage. It's just like, yes, true.
Yeah, he was playing no games. And on top of that, Poilievre's attacking and really putting the pressure on Trudeau about the carbon tax, yada, yada, yada. He volleys the question to Trudeau on the carbon tax as per usual, and this was the answer that Trudeau gave.
While the Conservative leader is muzzling his own caucus and putting himself first, we'll keep putting Canadians.
Get ready.
He walked. This one is just too easy. He walked into it. He had to muzzle a member from Newfoundland who called for an end to his leadership, joining another senator who did the same, because they understand that their constituents are literally starving and unable to heat their homes because the Prime Minister is quadrupling the carbon tax, doubling housing costs, and giving the worst inflation in 40 years. Why won't he listen to, instead of intimidating, his member for Newfoundland and put his leadership up to a review for...
I love that.
Got him. Yeah. So it's just one of those moments, right, where I just, based on, again, that interview that happened last week, and then he going into question period, just ready to punched him right in the mouth, and Trudeau didn't know what was going on. It was tough to watch.
I know, but I love it. I really, I really love it. And if you saw that interview that the MP from Newfoundland actually gave, I was like, oh man.
We'll be getting into it later. Yeah.
Where is the Liberal, I don't know, mouthpiece or publicity? What word am I struggling?
The whip?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like publicist is the word I'm looking for.
Gotcha.
Like, who was the person that was supposed to look at this and go, maybe we should not say that?
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a fun segment. Well, speaking of muzzling people, we do have the finance minister of our country, Chrystia Freeland, on with us. Chrystia, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How is the family these days?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on your show. Everybody's doing great. We canceled Disney Plus recently, so we've been saving a lot of money and really just, fitting in with the rest of the middle class in the country. It's been great.
How does it feel to be normal now that you canceled your Disney Plus?
It's a real struggle. I now, when I'm at Whole Foods, I look at the prices. It doesn't really impact my spending habits because I'm worth millions of dollars, but it really does shock me sometimes, the prices that you see at the grocery store. And yeah, my church has a food bank. It's just horrible what you see in this country right now.
Gee, and what's the, like, are you donating to the food bank actively, or is that something you're just letting the church take care of?
That's really, I'm very busy, focused on climate change and saving the country and the globe as a whole. And I don't really have time to help out with food banks, but we definitely have a great system in my church. And I like to talk about it because I need people to know that I go to church and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And I mean, I do have to say, Chrystia, it's so great that you were able to take time, knowing how busy you are and knowing how you've been giving press conferences recently too. I thought it was incredible that Justin Trudeau was so willing to cowardly run away and give you the mic to really discuss the most latest ruling coming out of the Supreme Court of Canada. What are your thoughts on that? I know you have said that you wanted to challenge it, but I was wondering if you could maybe give us more detail.
Well, I'd like to start by saying I absolutely respect the Canadian judicial system. But what I really mean by that is that I have no respect for the Canadian judicial system, and we plan to appeal the result. There is no way that we will allow this decision to be upheld. We will stop at nothing to end peaceful protests. Let me be clear.
Yeah. Do you think that you would even go as far as freeze the bank accounts of those Supreme Court justices, maybe?
I'll freeze any bank account that I have to. I practice freezing bank accounts every day.
Oh, gee.
I'm ready.
All set. I guess speaking of being ready to seize funds that aren't yours, you really come as an advocate for the new digital sales tax, and which you're pretty much set for really any tax because you're taking money that's not yours. What was the difference of the DST versus the HST? You know that the HST exists, right? That you're already taxing 15% for people.
Thank you for your question. Let me be clear. I will have an ST on every letter of the alphabet by the time I'm done with this place. We will have to start creating new letters for our alphabet just so that I can make more sales tax to put on the end of them. I promise you that.
Gee, wow, you're really sticking to your guns here. And that's, I'm guessing the goal is because you really want to give back to the people of Canada. Is that correct?
Of course, always. Anything to generate revenue for the middle class and those working hard to join it. My focus is always on supporting the middle class. And the way that we do that is tax them more and more. That is the only way that they can thrive.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, honestly, I have to respect that tenacity and that dedication to the taxes that you have listed out there, and to actually add more alphabet to have more tax. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that was really, really well said. And I think that you're completely right. That is the only way forward.
Absolutely. And
yes, I'm glad that we agree. I'm glad that we agree on that.
Gee, wow, you're really on it today. We'll kind of finish off with this question. What is your favorite electric vehicle?
That's a great question. And I would really have to say that I am in full support of every electric vehicle on the market, with the exception of Tesla. I do not support Tesla. I do not support Elon Musk. He is a threat to democracy. He is a threat to free speech. He is a threat to the entire world. And all I can say is electric vehicles are the most important thing right now in the country, as long as you don't buy a Tesla.
Got it. So I'll kind of follow up with this question then. Is, do you prefer your cobalt mined by Indonesian children or Congolese children?
You know, it really doesn't matter to me. I think they're both great. I think that Canadian children could really learn a lesson in hard work. And I would love to see Canadian children mining cobalt. I think that it would be a great revenue generator. I absolutely would love to see Canadian children working harder instead of, playing on playgrounds. What's that all about?
Fair enough.
Yeah, I guess my last question for you, Chrystia, is, there's been a lot of calls for Justin Trudeau to step down. Do you think that you'd be ready to take the helm and step in his place if that was to happen?
You know what? I truly believe that there is no better leader than Justin Trudeau. The only way that I would step in as a leader is if my chosen leader chose me. And in that case, it would be an honor.
Well, thank you so much for that. That was insightful.
Absolutely. And there was actually speaking of, there's something that kind of came on the whim this week, which is very recent. I actually want to get the question out for you is there's been murmurs of your party, Justin Trudeau, working with Jagmeet Singh of the NDP party, trying to change up some election laws. What's your take on that? What do you want to see happen there?
Look, that's a great question. And that's definitely a question that Canadians would like the answer to. Let me start by saying all good systems need an update once in a while. We need to ensure that they're still doing exactly what the Liberal Party needs them to do, and that is win elections. And whatever we need to do, even if that means making new rules, we will do it. We cannot let the Conservatives ruin our plans for a green economy.
All right.
Was I crystal clear on that?
Very crystal clear that you want to make sure that the election system favors you, is what I understood.
You were Chrystia clear.
Yes, of course.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out for us lowly people. Giving you so generously to us really means the world. Thank you so much for this time.
Well, I need you guys to spread my propaganda, so I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Well, that was informative. Mm-hmm. Really understood where they're going with it, where they really think the best for our country. She nailed it. Oh, man. Eyes Wide Jillian on TikTok. Go check her out. Obviously, a great impersonator of our great fearless finance minister, Chrystia Freeland. And she nailed that one. Yeah,
and I have to tell you also, as we were recording this and we were listening to her speak, we had to mute our mics because we were laughing so hard. Like, what a good time. Oh my God. Yeah.
She was spot on. And thank you so much, Jillian. It means the world. And that's super key. Her and I were talking before the show. And the one thing I do appreciate about her is the issue that we're running into is right now, there are just a lot of people like us. There's a lot of podcasts, a lot of shows covering all the same things. It's nice. We do need people in other sectors or creative niches that can kind of push back on the BS in a very lighthearted way. And she's doing that with her craft, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing. I know that I'm not a funny person, but I respect a funny person. And Jillian is definitely a funny person.
Spot on.
So I love her, exactly what you said, lighthearted approach to taking on big, heavy issues, because sometimes the weight of the world can be on your shoulders when you're reading this stuff. So it's really great when you can actually have a laugh at some of it. Absolutely. Instead of a cry.
Seriously. Oh, speaking of crying, obviously we made light of it in our interview with Jillian, and we are going to talk about it now, though, with Trudeau and Singh's teams. This is from CTV News. say that they're quietly planning electoral reform legislation. And this is kind of some big news. As they're saying here, is as progress on some measures in the Liberal NDP confidence and supply agreement continue to play out publicly, the two parties have quietly been in talks to table electoral reform legislation before the next federal vote. Leading these negotiations on the political front are Public Safety, Democratic Institutions, and Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc, and NDP MP and Democratic Reform critic Daniel Blakey. In an interview with CTVnews.ca between NDP caucus retreat sessions in Edmonton, Blakey said there has been a fair amount of work done towards drafting amendments to the Canada Elections Act. Key things that they are looking at trying to work on are expanding from 1 day of voting to 3 days of voting, expanding mail-in voting options, and there was a third one, if you can remind me what it was.
If I remember, it was just kind of...
It was just improving the mail-in ballot process with both accessibility and maintaining integrity in mind.
Yeah, but there was one that was kind of, they didn't list it out. They just kind of hinted at it being like, and we're going to look at, eligibility. And that was just kind of, they just said it. It was like,
very vaguely.
What does that mean?
Right. Yeah. The ones where they kind of just tuck it in, those are the ones you want to pay extra attention to.
Yeah.
And this was rightfully so really concerning to Canadians who are watching what this government continues to do. First off, which I thought was interesting, is Conservative MP, well, not an MP, sorry, he's a Conservative candidate for Calgary Signal Hill, came out and did a whole video about it where he's like, he kind of broke down what they're trying to do. And he's like, honestly, guys, to those on the right side of the spectrum, this really is nothing. There's nothing crazy about it. It's just, they're just looking over some election reform. It's not really going to hurt anybody. It's not really affecting the integrity of our elections. So I just kind of quiet it. And he got roasted. He got wrecked. And the one voice that was very clear and distinct on this issue was, I believe it was, his handle goes Yukon Strong. And he's a Conservative based out of Yukon. And he was really frustrated to hear this. And so he was, this is what he said in a tweet. He says, quote unquote, calm down, quote unquote, these electoral changes are no big deal. My ass. Every single piece of legislation the Liberal Party has put forth has been part of a long-term plan to completely screw over Canadians and massively increase control. Electoral reform, quote unquote, will be no different. And as boisterous as this individual is, I share sentiment in terms of this should be concerning. There's nothing that this government has done where it's like, that was for the betterment of the people. There's always been some type of ulterior motive behind anything they've done, and especially the timing of what's going on where they're tanking the polls. All of a sudden, we're looking at mail-in ballots, looking at that issue a little more, looking at expanding a little eligibility, maybe. What does that mean? Especially with all of the increased amount of immigration we've had coming in, that's interesting that they're looking at that a little bit more specifically because they know that it's a little harder to get PR, get citizenship. Like that process takes a long time. My wife had to go through it. And as an American, it took her 1.5 years, 2 years to get a PR.
Yep.
And then on top of that, it's up to 3 to 5 years to get your citizenship after that. So it takes some time. So the fact they're looking at the eligibility should be concerning. And I do believe that people on the right are concerned and should have their voices. I think the Conservatives, especially a guy who's a candidate hoping to run as an MP and then take over Calgary of Signal Hill, I think you should be doing a little bit more of a focus on listening to these concerns.
Yeah, to me, like his comments, I saw that earlier and I was like, man, know your audience. Like this is just you not knowing your constituents. Like I don't think that was well thought out. What was most concerning when I saw this, one, when I think about the 3-day voting thing, that one doesn't seem like a big deal to a lot of people. And to me, it is kind of a big deal because to me, that's the psychology aspect. If you start to see the Conservatives like pulling way ahead because you can see all these polls coming out and you can see it in real time and you've got 3 days to adjust, that's a lot of, pushing, get out the vote of we can't let the Conservatives take over this country. And so then you start to see strategic voting happening. And that's exactly undermining democracy, is strategic voting, honestly. And so I see this as a way to enforce strategic voting for those people who have said, I don't like Trudeau, but I don't like Pierre more. So therefore, I'm going to vote how I think is going to, secure my least hated pick, is kind of what I look at it. And the Angus Reid Forum poll that came out actually supported that, where they showed that more conservative voters, or voters who have said they are going to vote conservative, have said that they're doing so because they support Pierre, not that they hate Trudeau. And then the opposite was true with the Liberal supporters. They said, no, less of them are actually in support of Trudeau and the things that he's saying, and they're more in favor of actually trying to keep Pierre out. So that, to me, was very telling. The other thing I think about this piece of legislation, like you said, the timing, because we know that back in the day, Trudeau actually ran on a campaign of electoral reform, then came out to Canadians and said, no, you actually don't want this. We did some studies and figured out that Canada's actually pretty happy with the way that the electoral system is working currently. Now he's losing by a landslide in these advanced polls and any kind of survey that is being done on what is going to happen in the next election. Now suddenly the electoral reform is back on the table. And so that, to me, is what's concerning. And it's funny because he's working in tandem with Jagmeet Singh in order to get this forward. And then Jagmeet has this to say to him. He says that working with the Liberals is like wrestling eels soaked in oil, saying that they're slimy. When has working with a slimy person been a good idea? And so I look at all that, and when you see Jagmeet even say that out loud, you know that things are desperate and they're looking for any way to keep holding on to power. And that's all it is.
Yeah. And Jennifer L did a little segment on TikTok about this as well. And I thought she dropped a piece of knowledge I thought was very telling. Anyone who's been following politics, especially during the Trudeau era, knows that, as you stated earlier, it's always been about he campaigned on electoral reform to win 2015 on top of the weed. And so on top of that, he goes through, nothing happens to electoral reform. Now, as you said, he's slipping, polls are rough. It's looking rough for him. And he's like, hey, Jagmeet, let's talk about this on the down low, this electoral reform stuff. Why would you feel a need to talk about it on the DL if you thought it was me for the betterment of the people? Mm-hmm. That's weird. That seems a little slimy. But the one thing that Jennifer pointed out was that this electoral reform idea has been a part of the Liberal platform in every election or campaign since 1919.
Wow.
Almost over 100 years. They've been promising electoral reform. Never happened. Because enough time goes by, people forget, oh, right, the Liberals are back in. Yeah, let's do it. It'd be great. I thought that was a wild drop of knowledge on that one. Mm-hmm. I didn't know about that.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why now? That's always the question I keep coming back to, is the timing of it. Why now? You said you were going to do it before. You actually commissioned studies and reports on it, paid taxpayer dollars for that. And now it's happening in secret, as you said. And the co-conspirator is just outing you as being, slimy like an eel, covered in oil. So I'm just like, why now? And why in the shadows?
And the other interesting thing about it is we wouldn't have known about it if it wasn't for Blakey on the NDP side. She came out and talked about it right away.
Yeah.
Didn't hear it from the Liberal side. It was supposed to be on the down DL, and they just outright said, yeah, we're looking at this electoral reform. And people are like, huh? What is that supposed to mean? I wonder if that was a strategy piece on their part.
Yeah, I don't know. Like to me, I'm like, is that strategy? Is that just a
stupidity,
dumb move? Because I think about like when the carbon tax carve-out happened and you had that Liberal MP that said, well, I should have voted for more Liberals out west, and how badly that blew up. And so I'm wondering, like, is this just another one of those instances where somebody said something they probably shouldn't have, and now it's kind of, the genie's out of the bottle, you can't put it back in, so what are you going to do? And so it was funny because I was actually talking about electoral reform, and I said, don't make it 3 days. Make it a national holiday. Give everybody the day off with pay. Get them out to vote, but don't stretch it over 3 days because, like I said, that's just a recipe for strategic voting.
Mm-hmm. And it's almost like it's being done on purpose. And He's laughing at me already. Here we go. Crazy old Josh throwing his conspiracy theories around.
That's not what I'm thinking.
yeah.
I'm actually agreeing with you.
Oh,
I'm like,
shoot.
I think
No way.
I think it is on
Men who are
purpose.
liberals are beta.
What?
Oh, shoot. That's amazing. That's why, because we saw what happened in 2020, the American election. All the crap that went down with the questioning of that election to this day, weird stuff went down that has been kind of like sweeping under the rug, move past it. You are a conspiracy theorist. Yeah. They'll throw all the names at you, get you out of our face. Don't question it. But that election spanned over several days. We didn't know for was it 3 or 4 business days?
Yeah.
Into who won that election. Mail-in ballots were a huge proponent of situations. There's states where Trump was up big. Then at 3 a.m., just out of nowhere, a bunch of Biden votes got counted. We're like, whoa, that's kind of weird. How did that happen? Oh, it's just all the mail-in ballots came in and they all happened to be for Biden. I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Obviously, yeah, I guess the stats are in your favor. A lot of the Democrats during that election were pushing their voters to vote via mail-in. So there is an argument there. I think it's a stretch, but that was the argument that was made. So when that was happening, and so now with 3 points we just highlighted in this article with what the NDP and Liberals are trying to do, it's almost part and parcel matching how Biden won the 2020 election in the States. That's why people are freaked out.
Yeah.
And they do not want people screwing off their elections, especially after China meddling, India meddling, Russia meddling. And we're just going to expand our electoral processes after all the foreign meddling that's been happening in our electoral system? Are you nuts? That's how people are feeling right now.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling. I'm looking at it going, and also to go back to the States for a moment. It feels like that's just part and parcel for their system. I mean, you look at the way George W. Bush got elected. What happened to all the votes in Florida?
Yeah, true.
Oh, they're all in and they're all for George W. Bush. Good thing my brother's the governor for that state. So I feel like their election, I don't know if it's ever been above water for most parts, but above board. Thank you. Love it. It's just been bad. So, but when I look at the Canadian elections, I'm like, I used to have more faith in them. I used to be like, that's not us. We're not like that. And then watching this government do this, I'm like, crap. You are just literally pulling out all the stops, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Well, you looked at what happened in the States, right? So they instantly villainized identification, said it was racist. So you didn't have to have ID to vote in the States. But as well, there's something that happens, I think it's in close to somewhere between 60 and 20 states in America, is ballot harvesting. That is probably the least secure mode of voting, where you can just show up with ballots without any type of chain of custody, and you can count them as a part of the vote. So what happened is what this happened to a lot of Democrats is people would show up at people's houses, knock on the doors like, hey, you want to vote? And there's like, yeah, sure, I guess. And it's like, okay, just fill this one out. And that's what they did. They went house to house, have people vote in favor of Biden, tell them, hey, check that one off. And that's what they did. And that's how they ended up harvesting a lot of votes. In a lot of these states, that is legal, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. You can talk about legislation to ban it and make it illegal, but that was a big part of how they won too.
Yeah.
Was they mastered the ballot harvesting. So,
side note, just for fun, what are your thoughts on electronic voting systems?
You mean the Dominion voting machines? Not a huge fan of them.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of paper ballots. Chain of custody is very clear. That's where I think right now, the way our voting machines work, it's not sure that it's above board. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge fan of hey, paper ballots, people come in, are supervised when counting them, move on from there. There was just weird stuff that happened with the voting machines in the States too over 2020. I'm like, that's too easily manipulated.
Yeah. It's hard because I look at that and I'm like, yeah, it's too easily manipulated when it's digital, but then at the same time I'm like, but then you can also lose bags of paper votes and there's no quote unquote paper trail. Yeah. So things fair. Like that, I'm just there's ways to just screw around with elections any which way you look at it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I'm like, is there any way that you could just tie people's SIN number to voting? I don't know, but
in some ways, that's kind of what we do, right? Like, you have to show up with a piece of ID to vote. You have to show that you live in that area.
right.
You have to show up on whatever the card you get. You have to show up at that address on that date to vote. That's the one part they're trying to expand of this, is like you can show up to any polling station in your riding. And so there's, at surface, that looks like it's not really a big deal. But again, with trying to expand mail-in ballots, it just kind of becomes a bit of a shell game in some ways, and things get kind of weird that way.
Yeah, and what I also see happening too with that is that if you're like, I'm going to vote for Trudeau in this riding, and then I'm going to go over to this one and I'm going to vote there too. And if you get enough people doing that, eventually, things are going to get missed. People make errors. It happens. And it's not going to be perfect. And you're going to start creating a scene where you have a lot more ballots that are not legitimate being cast. I really believe that to be.
People could cast multiple.
Exactly. And that's what I think is a problem with that. And I think there's some kind of visibility. Like when I went to my community polling station the last election, I recognized the people that were actually running it, and they recognized me. There's something to be said about having that community focused voting where you see the people, who's there. And there's almost like an unspoken sense of responsibility there where it's like, okay, I trust you. I know you. There's a relationship and we live in the same community. So therefore there's, like I said, there's an unspoken responsibility and respect for the process that I don't think would exist if you were in a district that wasn't yours. Not to say that's going to be the case in districts that have thousands of people, like you're not going to know everybody, but there's something to be said about smaller communities in that way. That I think would be lost. But I also just, like I said, I just hate the idea of the 3-day voting, because I understand theoretically where it would be good, because what you're saying is that if you're a single mom, you can't get somebody to babysit because they're out voting, or you have to work your job and you can't take time off or what have you, like giving them more options. I can see that being a good theory and practice. Or a practice in theory, I should say. But I think that honestly, the solution would be just give everybody the day off. Just give everybody the freaking day off. You can give days off for a queen and a queen's mom, like Victoria Day and everything else. Give everybody the day off to vote. Why not?
And the point you brought up there too, right? It was like, yeah, if it's a single mom, can't get babysitting. Like, we already have things in place to address for that. We have advanced polling, advanced polls. The difference is, as you said, how this all started out is if you do this 3-day polling thing and they're just live showing results, like that's trouble.
Yeah.
Where it's, at least with the advanced polling, it's like, yeah, people cast their vote, but we don't know anything until election day. That's when you start seeing things being counted. That's when you start seeing people, as you start seeing results. That's how it should be. As you said, when you start opening it up, which is likely what they'll do. All right, live the poll out of Shubenacadie. How are they doing over there? Oh, wow, the Conservatives are polling by 20-25%. Okay, well, if we don't want a conservative government, want to make sure you get those Liberals out. It is, I think what you addressed is very real and a very, it's a concern.
Yeah.
So.
And I just think about how many people who are like diehard NDP who are then going to go, oh crap, well, my person isn't winning right now, and I see that the Conservative government is winning right now in this riding, so I better go out and vote Liberal. And so then they're not voting how they actually want to vote. They're voting against somebody else, which just defeats the whole purpose of democracy.
Yeah, I hear you, brother. And do you know what else is really frustrating? Ken McDonald, baby. Yes. What a guy. This brother's like, yo, we need a formal leadership review of our Liberal Party. And he's an MP out of Newfoundland. And he said, man, Trudeau's just not the answer. We're not feeling him. And then a couple days goes by. And by a couple days, I mean 16 hours. And he's like, I never said that. Trudeau's awesome. We love him. Well, I'm curious what happened in those backroom conversations that got him to, pipe down over there. But so, what are your perspective on this one?
I mean, this is the second time for him. Honestly, the first time was the carbon tax, where he was like, I'm hearing from my constituents that they can't pay this, so we need to really have a good review of this. And he got shut down because he voted against it, and they weren't happy about that. So then, when they voted again, he voted in favor of the carbon tax, rightfully after he got the carve out for his constituents. So on one hand, I'm like, I guess you did serve your constituents in that way? You know, you pushed enough that you got something for your people, but then said, screw you to the rest of Canada. So that's pretty self-serving. But then, in this case, he tells the CBC reporter, or was it CBC? I can't remember. Yeah, it was CBC. Tells him straight up, yeah, you know, I think that we need a leader review. And they're like, really? You know, he's like, yes, that's what we need. And then, like you said, 16 hours later, no, when I said leader review, I meant, you know, thinking about our leader. And it was just like this word vomit of excuse to try and dig himself out of a hole that he obviously created and obviously got in trouble for. And all it did was just make him look cowardly, and it made him look weak, and it really reflected poorly on the party. Because what I thought from that was, oh man, here's somebody who actually spoke his mind, got told don't do that, or else you're probably out of the party, is probably what they said. You know, if you don't want to be a Liberal, then don't say these things about our leader. And got put back in his place. And I hate that so much, because to me, like, that's not the Newfoundland way. I mean, we've seen other leaders come out of Newfoundland and out of Atlantic Canada, for that matter, who've gone independent afterwards because they said, this is the right way for my constituents. And I have the utmost respect for them. Bill Casey is one that comes to mind out of Nova Scotia, did that, went against his party and became an independent. Ken, if you had any kind of cojones and any kind of integrity, that's what you would have done, not backtrack and say that you didn't say what you said.
Yeah, it's a very popular thing for him to do these days. And we talked about it over text when this all happened and went down. And well, my perspective on this whole thing was this is his version of pushing back on the party without getting kicked out of the party. Mm-hmm. But you said, it just makes him look so feeble and so weak, and we need strong leadership at this time. We are in a culture war. We are, in some ways, and some people would go as far as saying we're witnessing a cultural revolution in this country. And it's getting crazy. Like, you make one stance on one thing, no matter how big or small, all of a sudden you're a part of that group. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what to do. So I know as a private citizen how that feels. It sucks. It's not fun. I know people who are listening to the show are just like, man, I just want to live my life. I just want to be able to talk about things without being villainized or being told I'm the worst or that I'm the best, whatever it is. But I can only imagine when you're a part of this party right now, trying to represent your constituents, how much hotter the fire is at this point. I'm not giving him any excuses, but I'm telling people who are in politics right now, it's time to start getting some more intestinal fortitude, realize what's happening around you, realize what's at stake. Look at an interview like what Poilievre had and talk about what's at stake in that party right now. Mm-hmm. That Liberal Party, I don't care what happens. I know it's not going to be likely, but I hope Poilievre hits that 222 seats. I want to see an absolute rebuke of the Liberal Party and realizing you better not go back down this path again. You cannot allow someone like that to lead the party ever again, or you're never getting back in power.
Yeah. You know what I'd also like to see? I'd also like to see some of those red seats flip to blue. I think that would be so interesting to see some of these politicians out there actually have the courage to go to the Conservative Party and say, hey, you want another seat? Like, honestly, wouldn't that be something? Mm-hmm. I think that would be really telling. If Ken had any, like I said, any stomach, he would say, I'm not seeing how my views are aligned and my constituents' views are aligned with this party anymore. I think I might need to switch parties and follow the ideologies of the people that I represent, because that's what you're being paid to do.
Yeah, totally. And I'm starting to happen. I didn't even want to talk about this, but it comes up, is all the issue happening in the by-election in Durham region right now.
Yeah.
The twofer.
That was so dumb.
But like, going back to what you're saying, like, you know, people just changing parties. Keep an eye on these people, right? There's a guy, his name's Rock, who's going against the Conservative guy for that by-election. He has a record. He initially ran to be the candidate for the Conservative Party in that riding. Realized he was going to get smoked, switched parties, now running as a Liberal against head-to-head with this guy in Durham. And that was a whole weird situation. And so that's what I'm saying. Just keep an eye on your local politics and what's happening in your riding, and just see who's in the community, see what's going on. Unfortunately, and this is what the Conservatives are known for, and they're doing again for this upcoming election, is they kind of just drop candidates in places.
I know.
And they're not really a part of the community. And rightfully so, as much as it pains me to admit it. Trudeau's criticisms of Durham, the candidate in Durham region, though was not actually true for that specific candidate, the technique is used in other ridings where, like, I believe Jamil is his name. Yep. He is from Durham region. He lives there. He's been there a long time. Awesome. I'm glad that someone who's part of the community is going to try and represent it. But the Conservatives are known for, and I'm seeing it. We know a guy who started out in Halifax trying to run for the municipality out here in local politics, then wanted to be part of the Conservative Party, moved from Halifax to Ontario to go to a riding where he knows he can win, so he can have impact on politics.
Yep.
As much as I hate to say it, it's just I'm not a fan of those kind of politics. I want someone who knows our community representing us. But gee, it's a tough situation.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that statement. Is that I want somebody who understands the local context, because your whole job is to represent the people in that area. And how well do you know the people in that area if you've just been dropped in, if you've been parachuted in? And that is the criticism I have of the Conservative Party, is that they don't do a good job in that respect. Like, they should be out there looking to community leaders, people that are already, champions in their neighborhoods, and saying, you may think that you're a Liberal, or you may think that you're an NDP, but really you're a Conservative, and here's why. And actually doing some really focused engagement, especially in those communities that have Liberal, that are Liberal strongholds, and try and break that community up from this marriage of idealism of what a Liberal Party is and then what it actually is in reality. And so, yeah, I just think it needs a new plan of targeted engagement. And I think that if they did that, because they've got time before an election, because we talk a lot about this and polls and everything like that, but we've still got quite a bit of time before the actual election hits. Because I don't think that they're going to call an election early, because they're in a bad place. But if the Conservative Party was actually listening, if they did that, I think that they would really, really, really come out fighting, because they've already got the public support and the popular vote right now. They just need to do that on the groundwork. And it's kind of what Jennifer L said, it's, you always campaign like you're going to lose. You always go out there full force. Don't act like you're going to win. Like classic tortoise in the hare fable that we've all heard growing up. Like, you make sure you put in the work. And so I think if the Conservative Party did that, and did that strategically with community leaders, they'd be unstoppable.
Totally. And I agree. And I know, because when you're trying to run, you're trying to run and make things happen. I get, like, the shortest distance to the goal is the easiest to go for. But if they were to do the extra leg work right now, especially the opportunity they have, they could actually, you said, they could hold on to some of these ridings for a lot longer than just an election cycle. Or 2 election cycles. Like, they could really start becoming a cultural stamp for the area if they were to go that route. But with saying that, I'll just touch on it quickly. What were your thoughts on the whole twofer thing? I'll kind of bring it up here, where Justin Trudeau doing his thing, talking to the people that all love him and clapping and saying, 4 more years. And he said that he addressed the Durham region by-election. And he says, now Pierre Poilievre's new candidate in Durham is a twofer. Ha, 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 ha. Make sure audience laughs. Cool, got it. He, Giovanni, is both an ideologue and an insider. What he's not is someone who has lived and served in the community for years. This is a candidate who Poilievre expects will do his bidding in the riding and will be Ottawa's voice. Pierre Poilievre's voice in Durham instead of being Durham's voice in Ottawa. And I remember that exact line being used in his opening campaign video about Harper. Vote for Liberal, vote for transparency in government, not for have a voice in Ottawa rather than having Harper's voice in your community. That's about what he said. Very similar standpoint, which I thought was interesting 9 years later. And he calls him a twofer, which has a history of a racial connotation. Conservatives were up in arms about it. Oh man, these racists! How dare you say this? And we tweeted out about this, and we said very clearly, this is a losing battle. You can't. I refuse to stoop down to the Liberal level of just crying racism, because that's them winning when you stoop that level. Like it was a stupid statement. It was dumb, but did it have any racial connotation? Don't think so. Didn't think there's any intent there, as much as I cannot stand the jabroni. There's no intent there. But the Conservatives really try to run with it and try to hold. And I guess that there is something to be said for trying to hold someone to the standard that they hold you to. I get it, but I don't think this is the way.
I mean, you said it all, honestly. That's exactly how I feel. I'm like, he didn't mean it in any racial way. And I hate that you did that you went to that level, because that's what I don't like about his style of politics. And, identity politics is not what I'm here for. So when you start playing the identity politics game, I know why you're doing it. I still hate it. So you said it best, honestly. I feel the same way. I think that it was not intentional. I think jumping on it was the wrong move. And I understand why you did it. I still don't like it, though.
Yeah, I agree. Identity politics cannot be the norm in this country anymore, and you got to stop playing to it. I agree. I 100% agree with you on that. And this is what we tweeted out. So your boy, Rick Perkins, who's the MP of your area, said, Trudeau called the Conservative candidate in Durham yesterday a twofer. Mainstream media ignored it. If you don't know what that racist comment means from PM Blackfaced Justin Trudeau, then let Alex Baldwin explain it to you. And then they show this SNL clip of twofers. We retweeted that and said, this is not the answer. Cons can't stoop to the same levels of race baiting as the libs and expect to win. And we reiterate that here and now.
I think that's 40 Rock, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, you're totally right. It is. Gee, my bad.
No, it's all good. I'm sorry. Like, my Conservative member of Parliament here, I'm not impressed by him. I keep looking for some reason to like him. I'm just not overly thrilled.
One thing I struggle with Rick Perkins is I agree. I'm not seeing a lot. I don't see much on his record of him doing things, but he's very loud in the House of Commons, which there's something to be said about. That's going to put pressure on the opposing party. But that's all I hear about him is complain. And I'm curious what he's done for your community and your riding. And it's tough. Like, he just kind of, at this point, this is the argument in politics in general, where it's like you feel like you're going to win, so you just kind of ride the wave of you're going to win no matter what you do for your record. So I would love to know Rick Perkins' record. And I've looked into it. It's not overly impressive.
No.
I could be missing something. There might be something out there that's just not documented. But yeah, not a fan of him getting into, as you said, identity politics. Like, be better than that, man. Like,
that's exactly how I feel. And I look at it too, where I get his mail in my mailbox and this glossy thing about axe attacks, and I just look at him like, this is just conservative propaganda. Honestly, this is just spouting the same stuff. I want to know what you're actually going to do for my area, what you're going to do for me, what you care about. And I look at it and I'm like, you could put, a robot with a skin suit on it and say the same things that you're saying, and it would be exactly the same. I want to see you actually in the community. Take a picture of you actually at the St. Margaret's Bay Food Bank. Take a picture of you actually doing things, or talk to somebody, or have somebody in the community that's well known give a testimonial about the work that you do. That would be even better than the picture, honestly. But like, just be visible, because right now it's just this, and I don't like this. If I had a decent member of Parliament that actually stood up for what they believed in, spoke with integrity, but then was also actually doing things, then I would be very excited. And right now I'm not excited. It's sad.
Yeah. I hear you, dude. And I honestly, I think this has been a great conversation. I think we kind of hit a lot of nuance with what's happening. It is really interesting. And as I said, it was a losing battle to go for the twofer thing. Low blow, move on. Let's go on to some real things. by real things, I mean the Canadian cabinet losing their minds over Tucker Carlson. Yes. Tucker came in hot. I will speak for myself on this one. I'm a fan of Tucker. I like Tucker a lot. Only reason I like Tucker so much is because when I said this on the show before, I'll reiterate it again. When I first came across Tucker, hated him. Didn't like him at all. There was something about the Fox News apparatus that was around him. Like, just, I don't know if it was the graphics, the coloring, just the intensity of the messaging. It just came across so fake to me. Mm-hmm. Didn't like it at all. That's why I really struggled to like hear Tucker out. I didn't really take him too seriously until I heard him at a Politicon, I think debating Cenk Uygur, or at least having a conversation with Cenk Uygur, who is a podcaster from the Young Turks, who's traditionally left-leaning. And that was when I started hearing Tucker's real stances on things. And he just kind of comes from a perspective of like, he really just cares about the regular person. He thinks that government should be smaller. People should be able to take care of their own communities. And he grew up in the DC area. His parents were a part of or his dad was a part of like the politics there. He grew up in that whole environment, and his whole goal was to push back on that culture and not allow that to kind of take over communities in the States. So that's something that always resonated with me, and I always appreciated his stances on things. So when he came and he came ready to fire things up. Mm-hmm. He said some things, obviously, that got the attention of a lot of people, especially guys like Stephen Guilbeault. That loser was not happy about Tucker. He personally felt targeted by words, which shows the amount of backbone that man has. And this is kind of what really frustrated me about the whole thing is Tucker did what Tucker does. He did a speech down Calgary, went up to Edmonton, and again, the Conservatives, the people on the right-hand side of the spectrum kind of frustrated me in terms of their coverage of Tucker, where they showed all the photos of the arena he packed 8,000 people in, which I think is pretty awesome. But then it was just the rhetoric surrounding it of he's selling out stadiums. I'm like, there's only one stadium in Edmonton and it's outside and no one's right out there at the moment. He packed, he used half the capacity of the arena that was there. It's 16,000 capacity. He sold out 8,000. I'm sure if they opened up all the other seats, I'm sure he would have sold out more. But don't say he's selling out stadiums in Canada. He sold tickets at an arena. Still awesome result, but just be honest in your coverage of it. People got fired up. Jordan Peterson was there. Danielle Smith was there doing the whole thing. Conrad Black was there. I have to admit, I'll be very clear. I actually don't know much about the Conrad Black stuff. I just know that he did something bad or I didn't do something. I don't even know. I didn't follow the case. I couldn't say. I'm going to be honest about that. But people saying that was bad. Maybe it's because his last name is Black. I don't know. But people are all fired up about this. So there was a lot of talk, a lot of chatter. It was loud. It was louder all around this event. And then the Canadian cabinet came out, and they were not too fired up about the things that were said at Tucker's speeches, and this is what they had to say about it.
I mean, you're the minister that, as your colleague was saying, was targeted. I mean, how do you feel about your name being brought up?
I mean, this goes beyond me and the fact that I was targeted last night at this event. This increases political violence against everyone who runs for office in this country, whether they're doing it at the municipal level, at the provincial level, or at the federal level. As my friend and colleague Randy said, like, we can have differences of opinion. We can bang our fist on the table when we meet. We can have strong disagreement. But to incite violence against people who disagree with you, that's not how things should be done in Canada.
Can you clarify what is the violence? What is the violence? I think the minister also said this in French. What is the violence that they are bringing to Canada? What is the political violence that you're talking about? Just to be very clear.
Well, to put a target on someone's back, for example. To name
what is the evil?
To put someone in crosshairs.
He was targeted, bro. How were he targeted? It was on my back. Yeah.
The total ignorance of the
That's your go-to.
Yeah, I love it. Gee. But yeah, what is the political violence? I thought that was such a well-asked question because they keep talking about this political violence thing. And when you throw the word violence around, there's like a lot of weight behind that. Like there's there's legal ramifications, there's, safety. So the question is, what is political violence? And he was like, oh, there's a target on my back. For what? For words, for eggs, for something more? Like, what are you talking about? Like, be specific. And the fact that he was not being specific is just showing that it's just, him upset. Mm-hmm. He's upset. He got called some names. He didn't like them. And now he's mad.
And it's the narrative from the Liberals that does frustrate many, and I can relate to it, where they're upset because they're bringing MAGA politics north of the border. Tucker Carlson is an apologist for Putin. Trudeau has said that on record, saying something like that. And they were just a little rattled that Carlson got an audience. People are listening to him. That's offensive to the regime that's trying to get total control of a country. And the thing that was funny is, especially those who follow the Liberal Party of Canada, that this is crazy. Like, Tucker Carlson? Why is he coming north of the border? That shouldn't be happening. Yet, we didn't say nothing about Hillary Clinton going to Liberal convention. Mm-hmm. Didn't say nothing about Bernie Sanders meeting with the NDP. No words there. But as soon as Tucker Carlson comes up, game on. That's dangerous to democracy here in Canada. And even though Pablo, so you want to say something before I hit?
Yeah, I was going to say, to be fair though, like Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, both politicians, Tucker Carlson, and he's like media entertainment, right? So I can see that argument personally.
I think it's even worse. I think it's worse. Because you have people who are in positions of power in politics that can actually directly influence politics in Canada.
Right. But I think that politicians meeting with other politicians who have to work together because we share the longest border, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, Hillary's not in any position of power.
Not anymore.
Yeah, but this happened like last year.
Right.
She's been irrelevant for a long time. She's still murdering people apparently, but
what?
Dude, you don't hear the the Clinton list? Oh baby, it's a long one. Anyone gets close to them, people disappear. Oh my God. But that's a personal thing. That's allegedly that's a thing. Sorry. I got the caffeine pills in me tonight and I'm feeling a little spicy, okay?
Yeah. But I didn't hear about the list, but I do have to say though, like I agreed with you on your first point about like Tucker Carlson, where I was like, I didn't like what I saw when he was with Fox News. I didn't really follow him much after that, just because I didn't like what I saw to begin with. And then when he came to Alberta, and even some of the rhetoric he was using, like, we're coming to save Canada from this tyrant. I was just like, oh my God.
Liberate Canada, baby.
Yeah. And so I just looked at it. I was like, it is what it's going to be.
Yep.
And good on Premier Daniel Smith for actually speaking with him. I think that I really like when I see leaders talking with people, especially people who have followings and influence, and then being very open and honest about their politics and what they plan to do. So because that's something that we don't see from our current government. Somebody asks him a question, he runs away. Mm-hmm. Or puts Chrystia Freeland in front of the cameras.
True.
So I really respected that of her. Do I agree with everything Tucker Carlson has to say? Maybe not, but that's not the point. Again, the point is the fact that she actually sat down with him and talked to him like a human being, which I thought was great.
CBC didn't do it, so.
No, exactly.
He challenged him. You see that challenge?
I did.
Love that. Papa Pobbs was frustrated too. He wanted to air his grievances about Tucker Carlson.
Be your strategy effectively going forward is tying Pierre Poilievre to Trump?
He wants to be prime minister of this country. What happened last night is not acceptable. Is he going to condemn that? If he wants to run for prime minister, he should have the courage to condemn those. It's not acceptable.
So that's going to be your strategy? People attended, sir. I mean, what do you make of the fact that there is an audience for it and for their perspective?
Well, as I said in French, the extreme right politics, don't ask the question if it's coming to Canada. It's already here.
Is this
and they're bringing it.
They're bringing it.
They're bringing the extreme politics north of the border. Didn't answer the question, but that was the line.
I'm a 5-year-old man. I'm like, he's like, they need to condom it.
Yeah.
Like, be safe.
Brutal. Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. And like kind of tagging off of that, CTV did interview Danielle Smith, which her statement I thought was very Did you watch this clip before we started? Like, I'm about to show this, or is this going to be your first time?
No, this is going to be first time.
I thought from a political perspective, Daniel Smith's answer to what interview to CTV, you'll hear all in total, but just go into it. It was interesting.
Final question. There was a recent poll out saying many Canadians want to face a federal election this year as opposed to waiting till 2025. Do you feel like Albertans are looking for an earlier federal election?
I think we would be looking for an immediate change in the Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault. I have a couple of good relationships with some federal ministers who I think are real champions of our province. I think Chrystia Freeland, for instance, she worked with us on carbon capture, utilization and storage. Philippe-Francois Champagne has been very helpful on getting a couple of major projects to the finish line, like Dow Chemical, de Havilland, and the Air Products hydrogen. So I would say that there are some ministers that we can work with, but we can't work with Stephen Guilbeault, and that's the real problem. Is we've got an environment minister who's acting completely outside, I think, of the Constitution. He's acting illegally. He has defiance and disrespect for the provinces, and he's creating an unaffordable life for everyday Albertans and everyday Canadians. So they can start there. And
he's got a target on his back.
That's why
I love the photos they use of him too, where he's just kind of like,
Absolutely.
Oh, good job, CBC. But yeah, I really, really respect the way that she handled that, because she's not throwing the entire party out. She's saying, we have seen instances where we can work with these people. They have been champions for the province in different ways. I'm going to call that out. I'm going to acknowledge it. Like, that is what you call bridge building in action right there. And then she just very clearly said, this is the man that's the problem. So get rid of that man and we won't have a problem. And I'm like, good for you. You know what you want and you just said it. So I love it.
So this, I saw it from a political perspective of divide and conquer.
Yeah.
I agree. Like, you have to some degree, you have to work with the federal government. It's just the reality. So I know conservatives, especially out in Alberta, it's like, Chrystia Freeland, she's the worst champion in Alberta. What a joke. You gotta understand, it's a political game. It's how you have to play it. You can't just always be at odds with those you are trying to work with. You got to get at least something done. You have to work with them to some degree. So I think it was really smart on her part to isolate some people in the cabinet and be like, oh, this person is awesome. They're amazing. I love talking to this individual. They really help us with this X, Y, and Z projects. But Stephen Guilbeault,
gotta go.
He sucks. He's the worst. You gotta go. And I really did appreciate how she answered that. And I think that's a really healthy way to take care of business. I hate politics for that reason, where you have to be sly, you have to play within the lines, you got to be smart in how you word things. I hate that that's the game that's played, but that's how it works. And I think she played it well there.
Guilbeault, got to go. Guilbeault, got to go.
Dude, he was probably all the Greenpeace people were probably chanting that when he was climbing CN Tower. So, gee, what a guy.
I know what you're saying about playing the political game, but I honestly think that she's really smart. And I think that she's doing really well for Alberta. And I think that they're lucky to have her. And so I look at some of the different provincial leaders across the country. And I'm like, she's in the top 3 of like very intelligent political leaders. And I think that she's going to do good things. I'm seeing really good work done by our provincial leader here in Nova Scotia. New Brunswick needs some help over there. Their leader, not in the top 3.
Has he not, eh? Jeez, he bottom 3?
Oh, I don't know. I don't even know if he's on the list.
Gee, that's tough. Yeah, that's where things are kind of going at this point. And this show has gone long.
It has.
The boys were on one tonight. We were excited. So before I decide, or we decide, or we end things, do we end things here, go to a wild card, or is there anything else you want to touch on?
No, I want to go to that wild card because it made me crack up so much. I watched it a couple times.
Let's go. So obviously this is, those who are fans and know kind of right-wing comedy, Ryan Long, comical glued, really hilarious, does a great little skit on self-checkouts.
And what I thought was also great was the fact that it's so timely, considering the fact that we're having so much problems with our grocery stores right now, like the walking back of the 50% off thing that happened. There's another video out about cakeflation where they showed like the price of a McCain deep and delicious cake, and how amazingly enough, Loblaws wasn't the company who actually raised it the most.
Imagine that, eh?
That was like wild. But so when this came out and I saw this, I was like, I love this. And then I saw that you sent it to me as well. And I was like, oh, we're on the same page.
It's the wild card. Here we go, y'all.
So we're starting to see more retailers pull back on self-checkout and rethink some of their decisions to expand it.
Yeah, I've been stealing from this Target for 5 or 6 years, so obviously I was a little perturbed when they decided to get rid of the stealing section. I don't mind paying for a few items here and there, but obviously I don't want to put the entire haul on my dime. Also, one of the reasons they said they're getting rid of the stealing section is because people are stealing, so to me that seems like getting rid of titties because people are drinking the milk.
So the technology just has not gone as planned.
Gee, what a guy. Yeah, that was a good wild card segment.
This stealing section, I love it. And the worst part is, it's like, even people who are honest are accidentally stealing, because that was me. I accidentally stole something from the self-checkout. I had to go back in because I have such a bad guilt complex. I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take this. Like, I didn't scan it properly, and I went back and I got them to bring it in through, because I was like, I wouldn't be able to sleep if I would have done that.
I'm happy for you, man. That's awesome.
No, it's bad. I wish I could be like a little more rebellious and be like, oh yeah, I got that.
Stick it to the man.
Stuck it to Loblaws.
Take that, Galen.
Yeah. But I'm not. I'm like, oh my God, my integrity is called into question.
No way. Yeah, I hear you, dog, on that. That's wild times. Well, that was a great dang show, y'all. That was a dang good show. It was always a pleasure. It's always great to have y'all down with us. And we really do hope that whatever it is you're doing, whether you be going grocery shopping.
Oh, man, I was going to say using the stealing section.
Or watching football, or getting ready and watching sports, trying to take your mind off all the crap that's hoping to happen in the world. We love you. We're out. Peace.